varieties as well. So every variety of barley was targeting 30 plants per square foot. Then we're at 40 plants per square foot for all the other cereals as we go down to that end. And we have one demonstration where we've got Tri-Cal Surge at a 25 plants versus a 40 plants. The previous crop, canola, before that was oats. The canola was planted this way. So if you see, we had the male bays that you mow out, so you have different fertility that happens within the male bays. So if you see stripping this way, it could be because of different fertility between the male bay and the other crop because of how we mow that male bay out. What you drove through on your way through the maze to come here. Originally, we were going to go in the other entrance, but there was kind of a low spot there with some water. So we decided to change it. So you had to kind of go through the maze. That's all like higher pedigree breeder seed to select status or select status plots of higher pedigree production all around on this field. And then behind all these demonstration plots. There was 290 pounds of 4600 spin spread on the field and worked in. So that's not typically how we would farm, but that's how we kind of have to do it to use the drill we're using for this. So that's one challenge. About 80 pounds of 1152 with the drill. And that's all I've got for that. So maybe, I think that's all I want to talk about for the setup. Feel free to come sit on the straw bales if you want. I think when we move it up next time, Paul will wiggle a little further away again as well. So next time we move. Ezra, do you want to just come talk about the first two varieties? I kind of like the Churchill seems to stand really well. Maybe a little more lodging in the Fraser in these plots. Oh, we did do a PGR on them. So these had manipulator, which isn't super effective on most barley varieties. So we do have some lodging showing and some that aren't. So maybe Ezra, talk about the first two malt barleys here.
Hi, I'm Esri. I'm the Alberta BC marketing rep for Seacan. I started with Seacan in September, so this is my first time seeing a lot of these in the field, which is really cool. So I'll start with Fraser actually. So Fraser is a little bit older than Churchill, and it was our replacement for Metcalf and Copeland. Both Fraser and Churchill have very similar yields. Churchill, we're still working on the market development in malt, but it seems to be picking up steam, and the demand is going up for that one. And yeah, Churchill is just the newer, building off of Fraser, low protein. Yeah, strong.
Okay. And Fraser, I would say, is, from what I've seen, kind of a Metcalf Copeland replacement or alternative. So potentially, if you were growing those varieties, the maltster might be interested in the Fraser as well as an alternative, and the Churchill more of a craft malt product. Okay. So next on the list here, we've got the Bill Coors 100. This variety is closed loop contract with Molson Coors in southern Alberta. That's on irrigation. There are other areas that are growing the variety as well, so it has a fit in other spots. It's malted in Calgary at Canada Malt, so it's not going to the States or something. It gets picked up and malted at Canada Malt. Cody, they always have a program, and they always, if you are thinking that you might be interested in doing it, we can get you the contact information for Cody, who's the contracting rep for Molson Coors. And he doesn't know for sure what the program will look like for next year, but if you want to be on his list as a potential grower, you're welcome to do that. The variety is really early. It stands quite well, as you can see in the plots. And you can still lodge it for sure, but compared, relatively speaking, to other varieties, it's pretty good. But nice and early, like 4 days earlier than other varieties, so that might reduce your water use needs. And it yields. It's one of our top yielding varieties in these demo plots all the time. The other one behind me here is an experimental malt variety, actually. So I don't even know what the name is or the number, but it's supposed to be early, high yielding, short stature, and it's a malt variety out of the US. So just an experimental line. So, but maybe an alternative to the Bill Coors 100 variety that's in this plot here. I guess it doesn't really say Bill Coors 100, but that's what that variety is behind that sign.
Is that also Coors, Greg, or is
it is? Yeah.
the experimental?
Yeah, yeah. But I don't even know what the number was on it. I think I have it somewhere, but yeah, it's more of just they're trialing it in spots to see if it has a fit or not, or as an alternative, or is better than the other one.
Is it a semi-dwarf?
I guess you'd call them semi-dwarfs. I don't really know what the and barley, I don't really know what qualifies as a semi-dwarf. I'd say the European style varieties, I guess I would call that, and probably these as well. But when you do a PGR, sometimes weird things happen too. Like it'll stunt certain varieties more than others. So you get weird things happening when you do a PGR as well in barley, I find. And then before we move over, Rob, do you want to come talk about Dram? This one actually had a real big uptake last year. A lot of maltsters were interested and distillers because of the non-GN trait. So I would say a little bit of lodging risk. So in our production fields this year, we did 2 PGRs. We went and did 2 shots of Modus in crop, and we wanted to shorten that crop a lot because in our production fields, we always get more lodging than in our plots. So if we didn't do anything in our production fields, we'd be pretty flat. So I would say it stands kind of like a Copeland. Rob, do you want to comment on Dram?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. As you can see, it's a 2-row malt, and there's a lot of excitement about this variety, particularly from Canada Malt at this point, because of its low.
Hold it closer to your mouth.
Because of its low GN trait. As I was saying, a lot of excitement from Canada Malt, and so what's the big deal about low GN? Well, GN, which is glycosidic nitrile, is actually a precursor to a compound that forms during the distilling process that is thought to be a carcinogen. And so there's excitement about this variety for that reason. From an agronomic standpoint, fairly similar to Copeland. And if you go through the data, Greg, I don't know what your experience has been for yield, but based on the data in the brown soil zones, which we are here in southern Alberta, it's about 4% better than Copeland, at least according to the registration trial data. It's a little bit earlier than Copeland if you have experience with that, and a little bit better lodging resistance. Although you can see here it is going down a little bit. Great disease package, actually, resistance to loose and covered smuts, resistant to the spot form of net blotch, and it's got an MR to I rating for FHB and Dawn. So it's great from that standpoint. I should mention that Dram was developed by WCI, the former FCDC program out of Lacombe. Oh, one last thing. So this is a seed net variety, and it's going to be marketed under a synergy type program. And so what that means is the year after certified seed purchase, you can take your own grain to plant a similar acreage for 1 year, and then the following year after that, you need to go back to certified seed.
And I think part of that is for purity as well, because they're interested in the non-GN trait for distilling. So that's part of that as well, to maintain purity of the program. This variety, so yield-wise, last year, it averaged 140 bushels an acre for us on irrigation. What does that mean? Probably nothing, because it's relative to what, right? Could have we had 150 of a different variety or less of a different variety? So it's all relative to what you could have had in that field. In our demo plots last year, we had a lot of stunting, so we didn't get great information. It was in the pack for barley yields, but this year we're going to get some good information, I feel, and really make get a good comparison there. So I think
who's taking that, Greg?
all the maltsters are interested. Canada Malt, RAR. Like if you say non-GN to a distiller or maltster, their eyes open. Yeah, so just say that to have your customers bug the maltsters about that, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we're interested. Yeah. So I think if we'll move this trailer a little bit forwards and maybe a little bit further away, so then people can sit on it if they want to. and I know I've said it in the past, but the goal behind doing these plots is I felt like we were farming differently than what some of the information we were getting about varieties, and so we wanted to do something that was more along the lines of how us and our customers farmed, and how does that respond. How do the varieties respond to a different style of farming where your higher plant pops, more fungicides, PGRs, things like that, and does that give you different results on the varieties that you're growing? And does it then, how do we pick the varieties that are best for our customers? So that's what we did with this, because field to field it was too hard to tell anything. But in these plots we get a lot of information, but it's not science. When you look at our information on our website this fall or in our emails, it's not science. You can't take it for exactly that. It's just a farmer side by side, but it's information for you to look at to make decisions on, to help you make decisions. So we've got the Planet and Asteroid. I don't know a lot about these varieties other than the one is non-GN. Asteroid is a non-GN variety, and they're European varieties, but I don't know a lot about them. Do you either? Okay.
Neither do I.
Welcome to the tour.
Looks nice.
They look good.
So both of these are European varieties. Asteroid is the non-GN variety. RGT, they're very similar varieties. They're both very strong, short, strong straw. You can push them in the field and make them stand up. Like they seem to be standing very well here. RGT Planet is said to be yielding about 109% of Copeland, and RGT Asteroid is about 108% of Copeland.
Are they both registered as malts?
Yes.
But they could be sold as feeds as well?
Yes, I believe so. And they're both under the VUA system, if you're familiar with that as well. Yeah.
So the VUA system, if not everyone's fully up to speed on that, when we sell you a bushel of a VUA variety, like say Esma or one of these, we pay a royalty obviously when we sell that seed. So if you were to clean and farm save some of that seed, you have to pay X dollars per acre into the Seeds Canada system of royalty reporting. So if you were to grow all of a sudden 2,000 acres, well, multiply that by your rate, and that's what you have to report and pay on in order to use these varieties. Some customers don't want to do that. That's fine. Then don't grow that variety and pick something else. So it's trying to create a little bit of value for amazing varieties in the system and to fund breeding a little bit better. So that's kind of the reasoning and how that kind of works. So.
Do you want better genetics?
Yeah, do you want better genetics? So, but the goal is how do you fund a system, and maybe that's maybe it's not perfect, but it's a little bit of the ways down that system on how do we all encourage breeders to do things for us that will in the end hopefully make us money as farmers. So, my understanding, I can't remember if I heard it right. The people from RGT, they were, it's a French company. They started breeding because they didn't find something for their region in France, like way long ago. So they started doing their own thing, and that's how it all started. And they turned into a breeding company that had fits for other parts of the world. And so I think on the Planet, you can push it harder while keeping protein low. I don't know if it's one of these varieties can do that. I'm pretty sure they said Planet, but I got to double check, so I can't quite remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was, because that's the problem on irrigation. How do you keep your yield up while keeping your protein low? Because that protein cutoff is a challenge.
Are these saleable then, Greg?
When do they launch? Are they official? Can we sell these this fall? I'm pretty sure it's available this fall, and if not, it's, well, okay. Yeah. Oh, so this, I believe, is a WCI line. Yes, it is. John, are you? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this is the 22669.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Bonus.
Oh,
and
hold it right close to you.
okay, sorry. Yeah, my name is John Bonus, and I'm with WCI, formerly known as FCDC Olds College, formerly known as FCDC Government of Alberta. So in the last 4 years, we've changed names 3 times. And you know the old saying, change is good. So we must be darn good, because we've made a lot of changes, lost a few staff, but I think this is our final home. We have t-shirts, so that's a good sign. So anyway, welcome everyone. So yeah, as Greg said, this is TR 22669. It's one of our lines. It's in its third year co-op testing. It's a malt line, and both parents are European types. So it's a European type. It's a semi-dwarf, and when we say European type, it means it has different characteristics than the normal malt types grown in North America. I'm not really going to go into those. So, but it has a low DP, which means it's a craft type. Its extract is higher than CDC Copeland and AAC Synergy, and that's the malt or the beer yield is the extract, and it has low beta glucan, which is another good feature. Yield is similar to AAC Synergy. What else do I got here? Yeah, I think that's really all I have. Oh, it's got a good disease package too. So,
If it's European background, will the malt traits be similar to what, say, a dram would malt like, or is it going to be more like a European variety?
it's going to be more like European. Like, I don't know a lot about the quality side of it, but I know there's a difference in modification and germination. So, and there's other factors that do make it a European type that's different than North American type. But Lori Otway has all that information. She's our quality scientist, and she's not here. So, but if you need more information on it, I can give you her contact. So.
For some of our staff, as people are coming through, they can park like right behind the portable bathroom. So, Rod, feel free to have people park right where you guys are there too, as they come in. Thank you. So, Sarish, it's our, come on up, Colette. They're both kind of princesses, I think, but no, the variety is anyways. This one, it can perform phenomenally. But it needs your help. So it needs a fungicide. It needs to be kept wet and not on too sandy a ground. But it's kind of one of those industry standard European type varieties.
Yeah, I think a lot of the European varieties are like that because they have a different disease package. They were developed in Europe, and so the disease package is not, I guess, adapted or suited. So somebody said, well, don't they breed for disease in Europe? They do. It's just not. We don't have the same disease problems as they do typically, and we have quite often different strains. So yes, most of these European varieties, I would plan on putting a fungicide on, right? So it's pretty much because you just won't get the yield, especially under irrigation. So, and they are, I mean, especially Sarish. Still learning about the stanza because it's new for us. But Sarish, one of the first shareholders that we had that this Sarish, he pumps his up to 35 to 38 plants per square foot. So he said it really, Sarish responds to being pushed and a plant count and less tillers and then being able to manage that fungicide. So yes, it is definitely a high management variety, and you need water to go with that, and then you can get the yield out of it. So it's been around for a while. It's under the same programming as Synergy, so you can save seed the following year, and then you have to buy seed the year after, right? So, and the same with Stanza. It will be the same. Now, Stanza is, so I'll talk about Stanza. If you have any questions about Sarish, you can ask. It's been around for a while. I think most people are aware of it. They're both registered as malts. So Sarish has gone for malt sometime, but mostly it's a feed variety. That's what it gets sold for. But the Stanza is Greg has a field of foundation this year, so just
on the other side there.
Yeah, so it is our non-GN malt barley variety. So registered as a malt barley variety, non-GN. We have it in market testing. We've started with it, but of course the yield is really good on these varieties as well. So they'll be dual purpose because malt barley varieties, somebody famously said to me once, I think it was Trent Whiting, that they're all feed barleys until they're not. So, because at the end of the day, it takes a long time to work the malt process and to find out if it fits in the malt house and then for the customers. So, in the meantime, if they yield really well, they're a great variety. So this one looks a little different in structure-wise. It's got a little bit showy-ons. I really like the head size on it. And I think Greg was really happy with the yield last year. So we have this in plots under management as well at some of our other sites where we've sprayed Modus on it and fungicide and left the other application naked with high seeding rates and a high fertility, so that we can get in some of the other areas, we can get that feedback and we don't have to rely just on Greg, because his is irrigation, right? So we can give it to growers and commercial growers all over. So, but I'm really excited about this one. Excited that it's a non-GN, and some of the maltsters are really interested in looking at it as well.
So would it be an upgrade to Surish then, Colette? In your opinion?
Yeah, I guess it depends. I mean, it's a different, it's quite a popular variety in Europe, so we will see the differences. Greg can tell us the differences from as far as if you're using it for a feed and if it's an upgrade. I think the yields can be very similar. I'm hoping that Stanza is not quite as temperamental as Surish, but it's that application of that non-GN and that malt. So we're hoping that that as well. So yeah, it's got kind of a secondary, but it does look different, and it actually looks like it's a little less lodgy in this application as well too. So
We can sell this winter.
yes, there'll be a soft launch this winter, so a limited release, and then a larger release the following. It'll be limited by seed. So
Yeah, the Surish, it kind of had a unique on color later in the season. It almost had a purpley ready on color to it as it matured. So we're not here on this one yet, but the field over that way, directly east of us, it's almost starting to look that way because it was planted earlier. These were planted kind of late, like as you can tell. So this was like May 27th or something. So all that rain mid-May kind of delayed the last little bit of planting, and this unfortunately got that delay on this half of this field. This half of this field took us 3 days to seed with 3 people, if you can imagine. So it just takes a long time to do these projects. Yeah. So my feeling about these two varieties is, like, at least on our farm, is we're going to be kind of moving away from Surish and into Stanza. We'll still have some Surish to sell this coming winter, but we'll be kind of moving towards the Stanza, because I'm feeling if you've got a little bit more yield stability under problems, like you're a little droughty, or your pivot doesn't get there in time, or fungicide issues. So I'm thinking if we can get similar yields with less of a princess variety, I'm interested in that. So we'll do Esma before we move the trailer. So we'll do the Esma first here, and then move on. This one has gained a lot of popularity, actually. Demand was pretty big this past year. VUA system again, and Ezra, talk about the Esma a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a European variety, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I just learned our varieties, let alone everybody else's, but it's very similar to Surish in disease package. You just have to keep that in mind. But you can really push Esma, high input crop. It stands really well. Again, under the VUA system. Yeah, people were really happy. I know a lot of people who are very happy with it, and then a few that maybe weren't, but that's just, if you don't get the water, sometimes it won't perform. Some pretty crazy yields came out of it. In the East, it's used as a malt variety and registered as a malt variety, but we found here in the West, it's very much a feed variety.
Yeah, so for these European style varieties, generally, if you're on dry land in our area, you should probably not be growing them. There could be some circumstances where maybe there could be a fit, or maybe some of these aren't as bad when it gets real dry. But typically, if you're in this area on dryland growing a barley, I'd probably recommend a Canadian variety over a European background variety. And then on irrigation or somewhere where you've got high fertility or high management, then let's go all in on these European style varieties. So that's kind of my feel for that. So I think ESMA is going to have a few years of good sales for sure, because it's just performed so well. And honestly, I mean, how do you convince someone to grow a malt variety like the Bill Coors 100? Well, it's got to yield almost as much as these varieties, or they have to pay you more to get you to grow that malt variety. So when you get all these varieties competing in the marketplace, yeah, how do you get someone to grow a malt variety on irrigation down here when you could grow this for feed? It's either a price or a yield thing, right? So, yes.
Greg, last year the barley was standing. This year it's flat. What's going on?
In your fields or in ours?
Well, in my field.
Okay. Did you do a PGR at all this year, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Manipulator or Modus?
Asthma, the same barley last year, the same treatment last year and this year.
Is it manipulator or Modus?
Modus.
Okay. This year, oh, Matt, yeah, come on, bail me out, man. Come here.
Did you do a soil test?
Yes.
Was it high? And did you follow a recommendation?
I followed recommendations like last year.
Okay, so we had, and sorry to jump in here, but very common problem. And we saw ridiculously high nitrogen numbers last year, more so than 2021, which I thought was a worse drought. I will never predict the amount of nitrogen in the soil, ever. Like, a soil test is a really cheap, and I know this is my business, but it's the most reliable number we have in a soil test. Depending on where your nitrogen was in your profile was an issue this year, because we had 4 to 5 inches of rain through May. So if your nitrogen was deep or if your nitrogen was shallow is also a function. But if you're lodging, there's lots of things that could go wrong. Like, a PGR does not guarantee it. There's potassium and lots of other issues, but usually it's a nitrogen issue on why your field went flat.
Hey, don't you think the early rain, the amount of rain we had this spring, the plant got lazy?
Absolutely. And if you have a poor root, part of the reason, or part of irrigating too much too soon, is lazy roots.
I mean, everybody in the country, you look at the barley, it's all flat this year. It must be an environment.
Well, so the reason I ask about a soil test is because only 30% of the prairies do it. And it's your biggest variable input on your farm is your fertilizer.
Well, I was blaming the nitrogen, you know. We're going to go back to the books and have a look at it, you know.
Yeah.
Matt, maybe introduce yourself, because Matt has kind of grown the business a little bit into this area as well. Maybe just say what happened there. And
So we've been premium ag. We've been doing independent agronomy for 21 years. We look after about 175,000 acres, and starting to get a little bit of notice in this area for whatever reason, but longevity might be one. I will never grow an irrigated cereal crop without a PGR. And I confide in Greg a lot outside of genetics, but also agronomy. Fungicide people close your ears, but I think a PGR has more of an ROI than a fungicide on irrigation with cereals. But ethyl, I know that's also a swear word because it's really, really sensitive. But I will grow on my hobby farm. I've never actually grown barley in 12 years of farming, but if I did, I would use ethyl. But your window to apply is about 1 to 3 days. Manipulator and Modus is 3 weeks.
It seems like you can't get Atrol anymore.
Very hard.
Very hard to
and
get it.
I think barley's not on the label anymore either.
Yeah, so I can't recommend it, but I'll do it on my farm.
Well, last year on irrigation, the asthma barley was just above your knees. I kind of thought there's not going to be anything there.
But we had such crazy heat stress, right? So I think we had a ton of stunting going on last year too, and this year we had that nice conditions, everything stretched out. So I think that's part of it too, just that extreme stress.
But it yielded very good. It
Okay.
was 200 bushels up to my knee.
Okay.
And
We-
this year, like, I was thinking, okay, we got her made. You know, let's go. Now it's all flat.
So I'm sure you've heard the saying, a fish will grow to the size of its tank. We had a cool and wet spring for the first time since 2016.
And I think that's what they did.
Crops grew. The peas, I had canola flowering at the same time as peas this year because the peas a little more indeterminate growth. They just kept growing. They didn't want to grow reproductive because they didn't need to. Now that switch is flicked, obviously, but the plants got more vegetative this year because of the cool and wet, I think, thinking like a plant. But last year, we recycled a lot of water, like the plants were dewy even after not having rain for a long, long time. We had 18% more growing degrees last year. So I had guys targeting 130 bushel barley that did 158. 130 plus 18% is 158. That is a main ingredient that we have zero control over, even our climate. Shh.
Tax will solve that.
Yeah.
Let's move the truck forward, please. And it's kind of our Austinson replacement, I would suggest, for our farm. And yeah, 2-row, little higher yields. Any other comments on the Durango?
Allegedly, it stands better than Austinson. Yeah, we're really excited about it this year. It was looking really good at Egg in Motion last week. Yeah, we're branding it the barley with attitude. So, yeah.
Nice. I like that, the barley with attitude. So you can see there's some lodging in there, and we don't have Austinson in this demo, actually, unfortunately. But I would say Austinson and it are probably comparable for sandability. Maybe a little better from what you guys have seen in other areas. Okay. So I would say kind of like the Hague, you see a little lodging in there. I'm curious what these ones are going to end up like for yield because they're standing pretty good. So, John, maybe come talk about these two here. I don't know a lot about them. And just so you guys are aware, these varieties aren't registered yet. They're just experimentals, and they don't have a seed company home yet or anything. Just seeing how they perform under this system relative to what you guys do up there.
Thank you. Yeah, as Greg said, these aren't registered yet. They're in their second year of co-op testing. This first one here is 618. Last year it was the highest yielder in the feed co-op, and it was 7% higher than Austinson. Lodging maturity very similar to Austinson with a larger, more plump kernel. So we're actually hoping this would be, for us, a suitable replacement for CDC Austinson. That's our hope. The second one here is another 2-row feed type, also in its second year of co-op testing. It was the 5th highest yielder last year in the co-op. Very similar characteristics as 618. Yield is 5% higher than CDC Austinson, and the other characteristics are very similar to Austinson, or a little better. So.
Thanks. So, yeah, this kind of gives us a little sneak peek of varieties that are up and coming that we may want to be involved with, and it gives them a little information as well. So Colette, do you want to talk about Hague a bit? We sold a bit of Hague over the past few years. Maybe just talk about where this fits in the world of barley.
So this one, Hague has very good feed numbers on it. So when I say feed, silage, forage. So I know when FP came out with this one, I wasn't with them, but everybody looks to target Austinson because that's, the feed barley that's been kind of dual purpose. This one I always thought, and you can see the lodging, probably not an irrigation variety, but you can also see the vegetative matter. So this is one that gives a lot of vegetative matter as well as a head. So the feed numbers are very good on it. We sell a lot of this in dry country, because it holds up the vegetative and the tonnage for silage. So it's probably not your best choice under irrigation, but it's got a great disease package and it's got some really good silage forage numbers and does well under dry. So that's kind of where it kind of should be targeted. You see all these barley varieties here. We have lots of different choices. So pick the thing and target the variety that's best for your end use and your management, right? And there's so much selection now, you can do that. So once again, really good feed numbers, but probably a more of a dryland product.
Yeah, as you can see, being a seed grower, retailer is like, how do you pick? Like, we got to have something for everyone, and there's so many different things, from 6 rows to malts to feeds to forages. It's just kind of chaos, and it's really hard to know where to fit and what varieties fit where. And And I mean, that's why we're doing this demo here, is because we don't have a clue until we look at the forage numbers. And Blair, I should have you come talk about some of the forage information here, maybe in front of the Renegade. Maybe just talk about what you're doing in these plots and what we're learning and different cuts you're doing, things like that.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So on the spring plots, I haven't done a cut yet, just because we're about a week away on the barleys, but I'll be doing at least a week away, but I'll be doing a 3x10 plot on them at soft dough, just to kind of see, get a tonnage comparison between the two. Quality as well. So what might suit you better on your farm, right? So it'll be almost every variety I'll take a cutting for, and then we'll decide, like, we'll put that all up on the website there, so you have something to gauge on for deciding this fall, right? And then I'll speak on it right now. The same thing down towards the soft wheats and the triticales. I'll be taking those around the soft dough stage too. So those will be a week to 10 days later than barleys typically. So they won't be all at the same time. So it's a lot of fun in the field, right? But but yeah, as for what I'm seeing, like there's some newcomers this year. Last year, varieties like Hague, Renegade, they showed very well even through the stress from the PGR. So Toefield was a really good one as well. So that it last year was a good telltale sign to see what got through the stress. This year will just be to see what numbers can really be thrown out, right? So I'm excited to see, but time will tell.
So Blair knows more about forages and animals and things like that than I do by far. So he's definitely your person to talk to about that kind of stuff. Matt, I always forget, smut or bunt on that little head right there of barley. I don't know if you can see it from there, but smut. That's a smut. Okay. I always get them mixed up in my head somehow. This variety, I don't know if it's this variety specifically, but this year I think we're seeing more of those kind of issues, and we've had a couple customers that were planting barley not treated, and when we do produce seed, you have to do a smut test in to produce certified seed on barley. But we had some customers that didn't treat their barley, and they're calling like, "Oh, there's something wrong with my heads." And I'm like, "You got to treat barley, man." Like, and not just with like, it's got to be pink. Like, it's got to be the traditional treatments. It can't be a fancy new system, because it's not the same, in my opinion.
It's seed-borne too, right?
It can be seed-borne. Yeah. But I've seen it with also zero, like with the proper amount in barley. It can just show up in varieties that are more susceptible as well. So this variety though, why would you grow this variety? I mean, it's lodging pretty darn good, but it is a smooth on 2-row. So for our dryland customers that want to take a forage variety, that want to bale graze or swath graze, things like that, typically that's where it's going. If you're growing it on irrigation, you have some lodging risk for sure. But grain yield almost comparable to Austinson, and which is much more than the other smooth on. It's replacing Esri. You can talk about it as well, but it's replacing kind of Maverick and Maverick Cowboy. So this would be a great alternative to that. Similar to better forage yields with much higher grain yields. If you have some flex acres, you don't know if you're going to take it to grain or forage. So, any other comments on Renegade?
Don't push it.
Yeah, don't push it too much. We probably had too much fertility here, but probably the typical customer using it is probably either in a drier area or not a high fertility field, I would say. So. Is it more drought tolerant than Maverick?
Similar.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would know. Maybe similar. Yeah, I haven't heard anything one way or the other. As far as drought tolerance, if I forgot to repeat the question. Let's talk about these two before we move. So Rob, maybe you can. I'm really excited about this variety actually. So I love 6-row barleys on irrigation. They seem to tolerate stress and handle problems well. The year that we had extreme heat through May and June, it stunted barleys. The 6 rows grew through right through that. The 6 rows were phenomenal under problems. So I love 6 rows.
Okay, Thanks, Greg. Yeah, this is actually quite an exciting barley, and it's probably the newest variety for SeedNet. It let me see. It has been recommended for registration. It doesn't have a name yet. We'll be working with the WCI people to come up with a name. This is a dual-purpose variety from the standpoint of grain and forage. From a forage standpoint, it's very similar to AB Cadillac and CDC Cowboy, where it has a real advantage is twofold. One is that grain yield is much higher. We're talking on the order of about 20%. And it's got ultra smooth awns, which is also a consideration when you're making forage. Maturity-wise, it's about a day later than Austenson. You can see the straw strength is pretty good, and anecdotally, last year under severe drought, as Greg was saying, it tended to hang in there better than some of the other varieties, and the plump percentage was maintained better than some other varieties, and of course that is a concern with 6-row barley. So I think this will be a good one.
Yeah, as we come by this, you have to like feel the awns of some of these other varieties, and then come feel the smooth row Renegade, and then this one. I want to call this one super smooth or something. It's if you run your hand through it, it's unbelievable how smooth it is. It's really cool. Yes.
How many of your silage customers are mixing a 6-row and a 2-row and doing custom blends?
Not with barleys so much, but they might put a barley with a fall rye, with a spring trit, like a surge or something, like an onless surge or something. So we get a few of those triple or multiple cereal type blends, and then if they put a fall rye in there, then they get some fall grazing and maybe over winter and spring grazing or silage or something. So we had a customer grow a barley with a fall rye in it, and her intention was then to silage that fall rye next spring. So she's gonna take the barley to grain, I believe, and then overwinter that rye. So she's after weeds. She's got a weed problem on a field, and she silaged a rye this spring, barley with rye under it, and harvest that barley, and then next spring do a silage cutting, and then figure it out from there. So weeds was her problem. No, near Tabor, irrigation farmer near Tabor. Tollfield. We'll do this one, and then we'll move along after that. This one's been great for forage and grain yields. Ezra, any comments on Tollfield? Or it's a little shorter than like an Advantage or something. So maybe how does it compare to some of the other? Like I would say it's a little bit shorter versus an Advantage. Similar lodging, I would say, to this experimental or the new variety, the unnamed one.
Yeah, so it's a 6-row feed forage, smooth on. Usually, to help me remember them, I compare Advantage and Tollfield next to each other. And I believe this is the one that I would say is more suited for forage. And then Advantage is the feed counterpart, kind of, but works for both. And yeah.
Yeah, Advantage would be a little taller than this, I would say, and so maybe a little more lodging risk than this one from what I've seen in some plots. But yeah. So we don't sell tons of 6 rows, but they're always there. So there's always people looking for them for grain or forage. So, any questions on the barleys before we roll along to Durhams? Okay, let's move that truck forwards, and we'll kind of park in the middle of the Durhams.